doing things, and I think an important way. So what we'll do tonight is, first I'll explain the background. What is an advance directive? Why is it important to have an advance directive? Why is it important for any person? And why is it important for a Jew to have an advance directive? Then we will go over the new Cedars-Sinai advance directive, and I'll explain what we did, why it's different, and why it's innovative. And then I'll try to give you the history also about what the other Jewish advance directives were, and then we'll conclude there. Okay? Sorry you just came in late. You missed the exciting announcement, and I'm not going to say it again. I'm joking. So first, you'll get it again, but we'll have to build up to it now. If you want, you can grab here the free gift for tonight, which I'll explain what it is soon. First question is, what is an advance directive? Why is it important? This is kind of a modern thing, because with modern technology, we know that modern technology is a blessing. Oh, for those of you who came in late, you're not allowed to look at it, what it is. No cheating, no looking. I'll explain soon. Okay, so why do we have such a thing? It used to be, right, that when people got sick, they died. Right now, thank God, we have incredible medical technology, and we can prolong life. We can do all kinds of things, keeping people alive, even if they're not alert. So what happens, though, is that people are kept alive, sometimes with incredibly aggressive interventions, and they are not alert to be able to express their wishes. And I think if I had to list, as a hospital chaplain, and involvement with the ethics committee and things like that, what are the most challenging issues that we face in the hospital? I mean, there's a lot, but the challenging ethical issues are how to make decisions for a person who can't speak for themselves. Sometimes we don't know what would they want if they could speak for themselves, and it's major decisions, life and death decisions, lots of pain, suffering, expensive interventions. How do you decide for someone if they can't speak for themselves? So in addition to that, there's an incredible amount of decision making. It carries with it grief and anxiety. Making a decision for someone on their behalf when I'm not sure that's what they would want, and I can't know for sure. There's a lot of grief involved. A lot of for the doctors, it's also incredible dilemmas. They have to make very difficult decisions. There's difficulty with that, and for the patient themselves, they want to be treated the way they want to be treated, but they can't speak for themselves. So they want their values honored. So what was created about 30, 40 years ago was this idea to create a document whereby one could express their values, their goals, their preferences, while they're still alert and healthy, and then that could be filed away with their primary care physician, with their lawyer, with their family, and if the time ever came, then that could be pulled out, and their treatment could be done in accordance with that person's goals, preferences, and values. An advance directive is an incredibly important document. You find lots of support for it in Jewish literature. First of all, we have this concept, if you've ever heard of this, that some people say it's a segula farichas yamim if you purchase your burial plot while you're alive. Have you ever heard of that? So segula farichas yamim literally means like a charm for long life. We should do a study maybe. People who have a burial plot versus people who don't, who lives longer? I doubt people who have a burial plot live longer. I don't think that's what it's saying. But segula farichas yamim, it means something deeper. I think a segula farichas yamim, it means, like, there's a story of the Sfas Emes. The Sfas Emes, the great Hasidic master, when he died in his 50s. He was very young. He accomplished a lot. When someone was being Menachem Avel, visiting the Shiva of his sons, someone said to his son, well, at least, actually, saying at least is never the beginning way to begin a sentence at a Shiva or in the hospital. At least, but he said, at least your father had a Richas Yamim. And the son said, what are you talking about? He didn't have a Richas Yamim. He died in his 50s. And he said, I didn't say a Richas Shanim. I didn't say he had long years. He had long days. He made the most of his life. He lived his days to the fullest. So there is this belief that if you think about the end, you think about what you want, it makes you recognize the fragility of life and value every minute you have, and there's a value in that. Plus, we know that it goes way back. And we'll talk about this, I'll get around to when I get around to the Jewish, to what we have to announce tonight, but it has a very strong history in the Jewish world. But still, some rabbis, some communities, there were times when advance directives were becoming popular, and there were communities, in the Orthodox community in particular, that were not comfortable with the idea of an advance directive. First of all, it's based on the concept of autonomy, because it's me putting down my values. And many rabbis argued, well, we don't believe in total autonomy. We believe in, submission to Jewish law. So an advance directive is not in accordance with Jewish values. It's not totally true because we do believe that there is room within Jewish law for expression of autonomy. But that was one point they made. Also, the very first advance directives, they were basically what not to do. It was saying, if I can't speak for myself, I don't want to be resuscitated. I don't want amputation. I don't want surgery. I don't want chemotherapy. It was mostly what not to do. And so a lot of rabbis were concerned about that it was some kind of a trick to end life earlier. And the last critique of it was that it's sometimes difficult to apply. And I do have an advance directive. I have one now. Let's say I hope it will never be utilized for 50 years. How can I know now what illness I'll have then, what medical interventions are available then, or even what my values would be then? Sometimes people develop new values based on, it's not that my values would change, my values are Jewish values, I would hope, still in 50 years, but your values can change in a certain way, based on your physical condition. Right now, I might say, well, I have small children, I have, youthfulness, I'm willing to undergo aggressive interventions, I'm willing to do that, it's important to me. There might come a time where I say, you know what, the amount of suffering I'm enduring, and my inability to recover from it, I might not value this particular intervention that I would value now. Things kind of change with context. So people were concerned, are advance directives even really useful? So there's 3 types of advance directives, and then we're going to get to the announcement. 3 types are living will. A living will is the most famous kind of advance directive. That's where you describe exactly what you want and what you don't want, what kind of interventions you would want. Another kind is called a proxy, or durable power of attorney, where you simply appoint someone to speak on your behalf. That's also valuable. That has a lot of value because at least you can know who's speaking for you, and a good one will have multiple choices, and so that people can be contacted and they could represent you. There's a value to that. And then there's some that are combined, where they have, it's who do I want to speak for me, but also here's some of my values. Okay, that's kind of the background. Now let's talk about the Jewish world, the Jewish context. The first Jewish advance directive was in the Bible. Yaakov, first he made, for example, Yosef promised him, once I die, I want my bones taken back. He spoke to his sons, their blessings, his wishes for them, dreams for them. He made an advance directive. He kind of stated, before he died, what he wanted to have happen to him. If you read in the book of Malachim, right? David, the first king, right? The first full king, when he passes on, before he dies, he knows his next is going to be Shlomo. Solomon is going to be king, and he describes to Solomon how he wants him to live, how he wants him to take care of him, how he wants to die. He gives an advance directive to Shlomo Melech. We also know, I think I've read this with you before, the Chai Adam quotes that in Berlin, before the war, we know that there was a custom that if someone went to the hospital, if they were in hospital for 3 days, on the 3rd day, automatically, no matter what, someone would come around from the Bikur Cholim Society and talk to a person about if they owe anyone anything, if they want anything, what are their desires, what are their values, what's their tzavah, what is their advance directive. And they did that because they didn't want to scare anyone. They didn't want to say, oh, you might be dying, so we better have this conversation. Therefore, they just talked to everyone, so no one would get scared. Actually, we know, just interestingly, in Cedars-Sinai, in my whole department, required everyone in my department, all of our chaplains, everyone on our staff, everyone has to have an advance directive. I felt like, how can we encourage others to do it if we haven't done it ourselves? And anyways, the process is enriching. La Crosse, Wisconsin, there's a preacher, a pastor in La Crosse, Wisconsin, who was inspired reading the Bible about Jacob, and he had a doctor in his congregation who told him about the importance of advance directives. So he decided to do a project. It happens to be a small city where it's a kind of a city where everyone goes to the same church, in this big mega church. So he required everyone in his church to have one. In that city now, 96% of the people have advance directives, and they were actually able to show in the hospital reduced costs at the end of life, because so many people had advance directives, they weren't receiving inappropriate aggressive treatments at the end of life. So what happened in the Jewish world? 1991, that's our first modern advance directive. Rabbi Tendler, for the RCA, he was the head of the RCA Health Commission, and he created a Jewish advance directive for the RCA. That advance directive is written up in accordance with Jewish law. It basically is just a few pages of possible interventions, and it's just, I want, I do not want. I want, I do not want. And he argued that anything on that sheet would be halakhically permissible, even though he thinks some are less appropriate than others. And it's just a whole list. If I would want surgeries, in which certain circumstances, what I want, what I don't want. It has there's some problems with that, as I mentioned before. There's also some upsides. It clearly accepts brain death in that document, because at the end it says about organ donation. Do I want to donate organs, heart transplantation, everything? And it gives you the option to say yes. And it says clearly that that's in accordance with Reb Moshe Feinstein's ruling, at least his understanding of it, that accepts brain death. That was the RCA document, 1991. I actually have a copy in my office that I inherited from Rabbi Meir, that Rabbi Tendler filled out and wrote on it, here's what I think is halachically the best answers to each question. And so I obviously kept that, and it's very interesting. So that was the document. That was one document. 2 years later, just 2 years later, 1993, the conservative movement came out with one. Rabbi Dorff, here from Los Angeles, was one of the people that wrote it. It's a very philosophical document. It has very long questions. It's much shorter, but it has very long questions about what I would want, what I wouldn't want, yes or no. That document actually takes into account two different conservative rabbis, one more conservative, small c, and one more liberal. And oftentimes the document will say, I want this, I want that, and then it'll have a little note, Rabbi Dorff wouldn't allow this, Rabbi Dorff wouldn't, and it's who would allow, who wouldn't allow. It becomes very complicated, but it's an interesting document to read. That was 1993. Then, 2001, the Agudah Yisrael made their document. But their document was totally different. They redid this, and they just said, they made a proxy. They just said, all you should do is appoint an agent and a rabbi. You should appoint a rabbi. And if your rabbi's not available, it appoints like a Beis Din or some kind of organization. It also says in there that whatever my rabbi says is really all that. Everything else is subservient to what my rabbi says. The rabbi gets the final say because I want Jewish law to be followed. That was the Agudah document. 2 years later, after that, the RCA revised their document. They got rid of Rabbi Tendler's document. They no longer distribute that. They no longer accept that as their document. It became controversial because of the brain death issue, and they literally copied the Agudah document. I'm not saying that to be pejorative. I actually called them and asked, when I was going through it, what's the difference between your document and the Agudah document? I don't see any differences. And they said, yeah, that's because we copied it. We got their permission, and we copied it. They were proud of that. There was one difference, though. They felt that the Agudah, you appoint your rabbi. If your rabbi's not available, then an organization, they felt it should be a rabbi or an alternate rabbi. And I'm not sure why exactly. But they just felt that was more appropriate for their community. And that was what you had, 2003. Fast forward, 2018, what's today's date? June 7th? June 7th, 2018, and for the first time we reveal the Cedars-Sinai Jewish Advanced Directive. Wow. The first new Jewish Advanced Directive in 25 years. So you have it in front of you. If you don't, there's a few more here. Thank you. We worked very hard on it. The first document, just so you know, about a year ago, well, it goes back about 5 years. Cedars-Sinai itself created an advanced directive, a new advanced directive. It was a great one. I was on the committee that created it, and I thought we did a good job. But it was a little bit complicated. We got some feedback that it was a little bit too complicated to use. You had to turn pages a lot. So we had this idea to create a new document about 2 years ago. We did so. In fact, my idea, my main contribution to this was something based on what I do. Anyways, what I did until now, I frequently do advanced directives with patients, right? So what my custom was to do the RCA document, the new RCA document, or the Agudah one, because they're the same, the proxy, where you just simply appoint who's your proxy, who speaks for you, and who's alternate if they're not available, and who's your rabbi. But then, it's sometimes not fair. So you fill out this document, then you send it to your rabbi, and your rabbi files it away, and your rabbi might not know you that well. Especially some of these synagogues here are big synagogues. If you're not totally involved, they might not know you that well. They know you a little bit, but how are they going to know if they're called into the hospital 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and they have to make decisions for you? How are they going to know what you would have wanted? Unless they sit down and talk to you about it. That's the ideal. So what I do with people is I ask them some questions, or I ask them to look at the Cedars-Sinai Advanced Directive, think about some of the questions, and then just write out like a 1 paragraph or 2 paragraphs, and append that, like as a writer, onto their proxy. And that's just like a little bit of a statement of my values to at least add some texture, some context to who I am and what I value to the document. So what we did was, the first change we made to the new Cedars-Sinai document was to break it up into 2 documents. One being very simple, very, very simple document. That's the advanced directive. And all it basically does is says who I am, who's my doctor, who's my proxy, who's the alternate proxy, and what are some of my most basic values in terms of what's important to me, what I would want at the end of life, organ donation, a few basic questions, and then that's it. But then it's combined with a wraparound document that comes in a folder. I took them out of the folder for you to make it easier, but this is what it looks like. Comes in a folder. One's detachable, one's the folder itself. And then in the folder, it asks a number of questions. But those questions are not, I want resuscitation, I don't want resuscitation. I want chemotherapy, I don't want chemotherapy. It's not interventional. It's value-based questions. We'll go over it tonight. I'll show you. It's what are my values? It's how do you get to know me as a person? And then you can try to apply that to medical interventions, but it's expressing who I am and what's important to me, what my goals are, what my values are, what my preferences are. And it corresponds to the advanced directive, so you can highlight certain things, but it makes the advanced directive itself a simple document, but then the opportunity to do a little bit more deeper dive into who I am. So we created that document. It came out about a year ago at Cedars. And as I started using it, I realized I was still having to do the same things. Like I was still adding things to it, writing things in. Jewish patients wanted to add in their rabbi. Or it said, for example, at the end of it, it said, at the end of my life, it's important, my burial wishes are. But the way we wrote it, the Cedars document, I mean, the Cedars is for everyone, right? We don't discriminate. So it says on there, like, at the end of life, after I die, I want to be buried or cremated as follows. And I just felt like sometimes Jewish patients look at me like, buried or cremated? So I thought, yeah, I can just take it out. There's still a blank line in the Jewish one, as I'll show you, but you can write in whatever you want. I'm not imposing anything on anyone, but I'm taking out things that are culturally insensitive for a Jewish patient. I added in addition to appointing my proxy, opportunity to appoint a rabbi. What do we do about brain death? I'm just giving you quick examples, and then we'll look inside. Why do we make a Jewish document? Because we have this problem in the Orthodox community. There's some who accept brain death, some who don't. So why is that an issue? Because of organ donation. I want to encourage organ donation, but I don't want to encourage someone who's going to think that it's prohibited in that circumstance. So I wrote in there, organ donation, once I've been declared dead in accordance with my rabbi's consultation. So everyone agrees to that. When someone's dead, they can donate organs in accordance with their rabbi. That's not controversial. So it therefore leaves open the question of brain death to different communities. So we created this Jewish advanced directive. It's literally at the printer now. You have advanced copies with you. And what I'll do is I'll go through it with you. I'll go through with you some of the basic points and let you see what we did and why it's unique and why I hope soon everyone will have one of these. So let's start with the advanced directive. I broke them up here for tonight's session, so it'd be easier instead of having it as the folder. You just have two packets. The first one just says Jewish Advanced Healthcare Directive. Sorry, there's a stack right there. So Jewish Advanced Healthcare Directive. So all one does, it's pretty simple. The first thing that they do is they appoint their agent, right? So you're on page 2 now. They appoint an agent.
Like a proxy. Same concept.
Just like a proxy,
RCA.
same thing. But one thing that I thought was important was to have a first agent and an alternate agent. An alternate, so that the idea here is that you don't just appoint an agent. You have to actually choose. You have to prioritize. I know it could be difficult, but it's important because there's a lot of family feuds, a lot of family fighting around end-of-life issues in hospitals. And the goal here was to say, okay, when it comes to healthcare, I'm going to choose one. You know, like someone might say, like in my family, would say, like my parents oftentimes will say, like, okay, if it comes to healthcare things, I choose. If it comes to monetary things, my sister and her husband, because he has a MBA, so they're better with like business stuff. So someone might say, like, okay, in our family, it's not that you're favoring one person. It's just that, you know, for this decision, there's a value. It's helpful. I've just seen in my experience, if you can put a prioritize. This person will speak for me. If he or she's unavailable, then this person. So that's why first you have the agents. Then what's unique here is page 3. You get to choose the rabbi. I did change the wording, though, from the RCA and Aguda documents. One thing that I found, there's a program that I've done in a few shuls. I'm doing this actually in Kansas City in a couple weeks, God willing. I've had the opportunity in a few shuls, and I'm hoping to do this more, to do advanced directive writing workshops with people. Obviously, it can't be on Shabbos. Where we literally sit down and we go through all the issues, and I bring up some questions, and people fill out their advanced directives. And what I was doing it in the way I described before. They would do the RCA document or the Aguda document, and then they would append it with the whole list of their values and preferences, and I was getting a lot of pushback on the RCA and Go to document because of the fine line there, where it says, whatever I say I want, whatever my proxy says I want, whatever anyone says I want, the rabbi overrules. So people were not filling it out because of that. So I realized I needed softer language. So what we put here on page 3 is simply, as a Jew, it is my desire, and I hereby direct, that all decision-making about my health care be done in accordance with Jewish law and custom. And then you have the choice now. To determine the requirements of Jewish law and custom, I further direct my agent to consult with the following rabbi. It's just to consult. So all you're saying here is that please talk to my rabbi. Not that my rabbi overrides everything, not that you have to follow my rabbi, but I do want you to check with my rabbi. And that's important to me. That's what we're pointing out here. So it's a little bit softer.
So
Yes.
if you wanted your rabbi to be your primary, then you'd have to make them your first view, right? You'd have to make them your primary.
You could do that. You could say that, or you could put no agent there,
Okay.
only the rabbi. Or you could even put a note there. You're allowed to put, notes in advanced directives. You can add things. Yeah, if you want it to be only the rabbi. But this really does, it is clear that they have to call you rabbi. But you, and I'll show you, there's a few lines for you to add things in. But yes, it's asking you to consult with the rabbi. What? We're on page 3 now. And then the one that says that I don't think you have the right one there. The one that says Jewish Advanced Healthcare Directive. So, and then I liked this idea of having an alternate rabbi because let's say we're here, Young Israel Century City. So let's say you're a member of this shul and you put in this form, my rabbi, Rabbi Elazar Muskin. So hopefully, we hope Rabbi Muskin is here for a long time, and he continues to be here for a long time. But hopefully we will be alive longer than he will be the rabbi here. That's what we hope, right? So I figured, just put there, if this is your shul, so you assume that whoever the next rabbi is will be someone who you would want to speak for you. You would just put Young Israel Century City for the organization. Or there could be another one that you would put there. So that's why you have either rabbi or institution for the next one. I think there's a value in putting institution because you want to outlive the rabbi, hopefully. Not that the rabbi won't live long enough, but hopefully he'll just retire. And then while he's living in Boca or in Israel, then you're okay. So that was choosing the rabbi. Then on the next page, this is actually just for legal requirements. Just you put, you have the choice of when this starts, and then here's page 5, where you begin to have some autonomy. We put some basic parameters of Jewish values at the end of life. This is not just end of life, though, by the way. This advanced directive is meant to be valuable anytime one can't speak for themselves. It could be an accident, God forbid, and they're making a decision about amputation or something. And these questions, which I'll show you momentarily, would help one make that decision, but not just at the end of life. So then a person has the opportunity to write in some things. So there's a few times I'll show you where a person can write in their values, and it gives you the opportunity to speak for yourself. But what my goal here was, this part is more of like as a chaplain. Some of the things that I talk about with patients that I want them to think about as they're creating their advanced directive, some of them are listed here. So for example, just look at this last paragraph on page 5. So, having thought about what matters to me in terms of my religious commitments, my physical and bodily functioning, and cognitive, interactive, social, community dimensions of my life, which I'll go through with you in a minute. In the event of severe terminal illness, my life would be worth living, and therefore I would want medical treatments to be initiated under the following circumstances, i.e., what is the minimal accepted condition that I would nevertheless want to have my life prolonged for? And we simply give you the space to write in a little bit. So this is where people have the chance to just write a little bit about who they are, just for us to get to know you. Then again, scope of treatment, page 6 now. If this one is about, here, I'll just read it to you. Some people have ideas about which treatments they would be willing to receive and which ones they would not accept under any circumstances. Consultation with the rabbi is crucial for specific determinations, but this section is designed to help you communicate some of those preferences if you have them. So you could either choose, 1, if my physician believes that I do not have a reasonable chance of recovering to the minimal quality of life stated in part 2a, the previous page, which I'm going to show you more detail in a second, I would not want the following procedures initiated. Or you could put, I want all procedures initiated, or I'm not sure. You have the choice here on page 7, a little bit about, what matters to me. So if you look, we put again like some spiritual language here. Include any preferences you may have about where, with whom you would want to be at the end of your life. i.e. in a healthcare facility, at home, as well as your conception of a good death or a bad death. You may also want to simply finish a sentence, what matters to me at the end of life is. And if you have something that's important to you, you have the opportunity to just write it in here. All we have so far is the chance for you to share some of your values. This is what had not existed in most previous documents, particularly Jewish documents, which I was having people write in, but now we put the space for you to just write in a little bit about who you are and what you value. And I'll show you our guide for this in a second. Yeah.
Is this, just to reorient myself, you give the decision to the rabbi, this is advice to him of what your wishes are, or your wishes would override what the rabbi would say?
Well, you're really talking here to your agent. Your agent is the one who's making the decisions for you. And then your agent is representing you. The rabbi is being consulted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If you want to know.
if you want them to be. If you check that you want them to be.
How
Yes.
is anybody to know basically what the actual medical procedures that are available at these?
Exactly. That's why we don't have any choices procedures. If you know, if someone says, no, but I know, I've been intubated before and I'm okay with that, or I'm not okay with that, or whatever it might be. So if you know there's something that you have strong feelings about, that's where we give you the space to write it down. But the goal of this, as I'll show you momentarily, is to get to know who you are, not which procedures you want. I'll show you, you'll see.
But I think one thing that Manny's bringing up is that most people, especially if they're not medically inclined or familiar with a lot of medical procedures or being around a lot of people who have been hospitalized,
Right.
sick, or they shy away from that,
Yes.
they're clueless.
Yes.
They really don't know.
Right.
They have great fear and anxiety over all these things. So this would be left blank.
Yes,
because they
fine.
really are clueless.
No, that's fine. You could leave it blank. That's why we just put a few places. If you want to write here, you could write here. What we're going to do though in a second, you'll see. It doesn't matter how, if you have a PhD, if you have the most advanced medical experience, or if you never went to school in your life. You'll see what we're going to do. What this project does has nothing to do with medical knowledge. So I agree with you. That is a problem. But if you do happen to know, that's what we're putting here. We have some space to write. If you happen to have a preference about something in particular, so write it down. If not, leave it blank.
Are you suggesting also that people complete this and make a point to tell them to update it frequently, or just
Yes, we're going to get there. But yes, we do encourage updating advanced directives on a regular basis. Yeah, the Israeli law, when they wrote the end of the dying patient law in Israel, Dr. Steinberg, they actually put in it that the encouragement to have advanced directives, and they wrote in there that they should be updated every 5 years, which is a lot, but it's a good thing.
Situation where somebody's terminally ill in terms of throw every kind of support at them,
Yeah,
and they survive. They survive momentarily, but you don't know if they're going to actually completely recover,
yeah,
partially recover, no change. Now, let's say the person says, I want to sign this as a conditional thing. If I don't survive, if I don't get better,
yeah.
say after 3 or 4 weeks, then I want you to discontinue the treatment. There's always been a long contention.
Okay, that's a totally different issue though. Yeah, but you would put that in here if you want. That's not even being addressed here. We're allowing the rabbi and the family to deal with this. This is simply you're putting your general values in a general sense, not about specific issues. You're not predicting here what's going to happen to you. You don't know yet.
No, I mean, what would happen in terms of this document? If you said, I want to discontinue, not that I don't want to initiate treatment, but if it's, I'm no better after 4 weeks, I want you to discontinue.
Yeah, so we'll figure out how to do it.
Would you carry through that?
Yeah.
Even though somebody else is making the decision?
If that's what you put, that's what you want, then that's what we'll follow. Yeah.
I mean, along with this, a lot of times they say you should have a durable power of health, which is a little different than a durable power of attorney, general.
Durable power of attorney for healthcare. That's what this would be. This is it is a little bit different, but you're appointing your agent here for making your decisions for you. That agent, this is a legally binding document. That agent will be the one making the decisions once this is signed by 2 witnesses or notarized. Okay, let's go on a little more so you'll see where this is going. There's the option, also a legal requirement on page 8 for how carefully you want this guide followed as a general guide or followed strictly. Here on page 9 we made a lot of changes here for the Jewish document. This is organ donation. So we definitely wanted to include the option for organ donation, but not in a way that would, this document, I want this document to be relevant for someone who would have used the Aguda document, who is, Haredi, and for a Reform Jew. I want it to be equal, which is not an easy task, but I think we've accomplished it, and I'll explain why. For example, the rabbi thing, by the way, you know what I did? I mean, I'm Orthodox, and I drew this up in accordance with Orthodox Jewish law, but still, for the rabbi, I was very careful not to put he. I said, look, I don't want to all of a sudden, if I put he, then I'm not going to be able to sell this. I'm not selling this, obviously. I'm not making any money off this. But I mean, when I say sell, you know what I mean. I'm not going to be able to encourage people whose rabbi is a woman, reform or conservative, then they're not going to want to use it. I mean, all of a sudden we're losing this audience. So the Aguda and the RCA form does say he for the rabbi. So I said rabbi, but we just kept it gender-neutral language, just because I want this to be, I want to be able to bring this to Reform Synagogue and say, look, this is a new Cedars-Sinai, a Jewish Advanced Directive. Your congregants should have this one filled out. It's, so for organ donation, this is where it gets really sticky, because that was part of why the first RCA Advanced Directive got rejected, because it encouraged organ donation, even accepting brain death. And many Orthodox Jews, not all, many don't accept brain death, and therefore they see that as problematic. So, but I also, we do believe, we believe that organ donation is a mitzvah, it's a positive thing when done in accordance with Jewish law. So how were we going to do this? So what I decided to do was, if someone wants to donate organs when they're healthy and alert, like a kidney, that doesn't require an advance directive, right? That person is totally able to decide for themselves. DCD organ donation is something that I'm not going into detail. We're not going to touch that. In other words, DCD organ donation is where someone is dying. They're very sick and they're unlikely to recover. And so instead of they realize they're going to die soon, and they realize they also have lots of viable organs. So they prep them for surgery, and then they take them to the operating room. After all kinds of informed consent and confirmations that this person's not going to recover, etc., they take them to the operating room, they disconnect everything, and then they wait. There's different protocols. At UCLA, they wait 30 minutes. At Cedars, they wait 60 minutes. Some places longer. And if the person dies in that time period, they start surgery. They start retrieving organs. If they don't die, they reconnect them, send them back to the ICU. That's DCD. That's challenging, and halacha I just didn't want to even go into it, just leaving it off. Person can write about what they want to do with that, but the controversy in Jewish law is cadaveric organ donation. The reason why people didn't accept the RCA document in the Orthodox community was because they said, well, to donate a heart, you have to be dead, right? Because there's a dead donor rule. You can't donate organs if you're alive. It's against the law, right? So in other words, you have to kill the person. I'm talking about cadaveric donation, not kidneys, because you'd have to kill the person to get the organ. If you accept brain death, then they're dead, so you could take their heart. So that's why I simply wrote here, I would like to donate organs. Here's how we wrote it. This section is relevant only if death has been determined as defined by Jewish law and custom in consultation with my rabbi. I wish to donate any and all organs and tissues. So if my rabbi accepts brain death, then this includes heart, lung, everything, right? If my rabbi doesn't accept brain death, so this includes much less. Maybe just tissues, cornea, things like that. But there's still something that could be donated. So it's leaving it up to your rabbi. So that keeps it from being controversial, because I'm not imposing on anyone brain death, no brain death. It's leaving it neutral based on what your rabbi. And you have the right to choose your rabbi. It might be not even an Orthodox rabbi. You'll choose your rabbi, right? But even for the most Orthodox, this would be acceptable. And you could just choose. I want to donate under those conditions. I do not wish to donate, or I only wish to donate the following. And then I took something from the Aguda document just about being careful about autopsies, where I simply made a note that autopsies should be limited unless absolutely required. Please consult my rabbi. My rabbi will help determine if an autopsy is allowed, and if so, how to do it. And then I put here, I have the following wishes regarding funeral and burial arrangements, and just let you put it in. In the Cedars document, it says I have the following wishes about funeral and burial / cremation arrangements, and I just took that out. If someone feels adamant that they're Jewish but they want to be cremated, they have every right to write it in here. But I didn't want to, as a Jewish document, put that in the document. But they could put it in. It's just free for you to write it in. This document gives you a lot of space to write what you want to write, right? We did that on almost every page. And then that's basically it. You just list who your rabbi is, and you then sign it. On pages 14 and 15, you either get 2 witnesses or a notary, and that makes it a legally binding document. And then you have extra pages to write in any preferences. That's not where this is totally unique, though. So that's this document. This is now a Jewish document because it gives you a rabbi. It's conscious of Jewish law. But then we have another document that comes with it. So the way it comes, I gave for you, I took it apart to make it easier. It comes as a folder. The advanced directive comes out. Then the wraparound is the folder itself. And in that folder, so now you have the second document, which says step-by-step guide for completing your advanced directive. And in this document, it's every page tells you which page it corresponds to in the document we just went through. And as you go through this, it gives you some examples of what are some of the things you should think about here. So in the advanced directive, all it did, as you saw, was it brings up an issue like my preferences at the end of life. And then it just gives you space to write. So in the wraparound, it now gives you some things to think about. And what you do is you go through this and you can check off on a scale of 1 to 5 what your preferences are. But this isn't meant to be the legally binding document. This is just meant to be an exercise for you to go through and also share with your agent, share with your rabbi, turn it in, let them look at it, and then it gives them an impression of who you are and then how they can use that information to make decisions for you. It's just increasing the likelihood that the decision that they make for you will be in accordance with your values because it tells them who you are. So for example, on page 7, physical and bodily considerations. Here's what I want you to know about me if I can't speak for myself. Not just at the end of life. Being able to feed myself. Is that very important or not important? And you can do it on a list. Being able to bathe myself. Being able to dress myself. Being in control of my bodily functions. This is important because what if you have a person, we're dealing with a case right now. I'm not going to give you details, but what if you have a person who can't, they're in a compromised state. And some people might think, if they would know that someone had to bathe them and feed them, they would never want to live like this. Or someone might say, no, we actually talked about this. They said, you know what, my life is valuable. I want to be alive. I want to be there for my grandchildren or whoever it is. And even if you have to feed me or bathe me, I want to be alive. So they can share that, and that could really be relevant. They're not going to be able to tell you, I want to be intubated, I want to be extubated, I want chemo, I don't want chemo. That is too specific. But they can at least give us the general values. That's the idea here. What are my values? This document is just a chance to share your values. And what's important to you? It's important to me to be able to walk, get out of bed, live independently. It would tell us a lot if someone put all 5s for these, or all 1s, or 3s. Cognitive considerations on page 8. Is it important to me to be able to take part in my decision making? Is it important to me to be able to think clearly, to be conscious? Interactive social considerations on page 8 also. Is it important to me to be able to talk to other people, communicate in some way, have family and friends take care of me, contribute to my family's well-being, have privacy? All these things are relevant to know when someone can speak for themselves. And then 9, this is what I added. Everything until that point is also in the Cedars Advanced Directive. Here, I thought there were some specific Jewish issues that I deal with a lot in the hospital, so I realized it would help us to have these down. So on page 9, on the bottom, you have some specific Jewish issues that I just thought it's helpful to know. So for example, living free of being permanently connected to mechanical life support. Would I want to live on life support, or is it really important to me to be free of life support? Not dying alone. Do I want to have people around me? Sometimes we arrange, these shifts 24/7, having someone sitting in the room. Is that what I want, or no? Maybe some people want to be alone. They want to be left alone, especially if they see that they feel indignified in that way. This is an important question, number 10, on page 10. I'm willing to endure much pain to have my life prolonged, right? Someone might say, you know what? Even if you see that I'm suffering, I'm in pain, actually it's not suffering. By definition, it's not suffering because they're willing to endure it. They say, even if I'm in a lot of pain, prolong my life. But someone might say, you know what? I don't want you to prolong my life. It's not telling you to violate Jewish law. That's up to the rabbi, how we're going to not prolong life. But we need to know that. What if you have a bar mitzvah or a wedding coming up? So we put that as a question. I'd be willing to endure much pain to remain alive for a family occasion. I'm willing to accept aggressive pain medications, even if that means I will not be awake and will be unable to participate in decision making. That's also, we need to know that. Do you want that? Other considerations. As a patient, I would like to know. This is an issue we face with Jewish patients all the time. How much do I want to know in terms of truth telling? Sometimes we have, especially with Persian patients, but not only with Persian patients, people will say if you find that the person has cancer, God forbid, or something, don't tell the patient. And it becomes a big dilemma. Well, maybe the patient wants to know. How can we keep it from them? Sometimes you really can't keep it from them, but sometimes there's room for being soft in what we tell them. So we should know from the person themselves. As a patient, I would like to know, either on the one extreme, nothing about my condition treatment, number 3 in the middle, only the basics, number 5, all details. We should know that about the person. What would they want to know? If I have a terminal illness, I would prefer to, on one extreme, not know the details of how quickly it's progressing. Don't shock me and tell me that I'm dying in 1 week. Or on the other extreme, no, I want to know all the details and my doctor's best estimate for how long I have to live. So that's a section of a few pages for someone to just go through and just share who they are. It's not choosing interventions. It's not, I want surgery. You don't have to be a medical expert for this. It's just me having a chance to tell you who I am. And then hopefully one day when my rabbi, my doctor, my spouse, whoever it is, my children, are making decisions for me at the bedside, they'll have this document to look at and try to make decisions based on these values of mine. Right? Yes?
These are binding in courts?
No, these are not binding. This one's not binding.
The first one.
The advanced directive is a binding legal document. This is just
In the state of California,
guidance.
if somebody had an issue, courts.
Yes. It's a legal document.
And halachically, obviously we trust you, but I'm saying, have you shown this to your wives or people like that?
So halachically, so it's based on everything in my book.
Mhm.
So when you say I should, the book has been approved by a number of different rabbis. This document has not yet, to be frank, it has not yet received like rabbinic, official rabbinic support because I haven't yet shown it. What we did was we created it. I've now printed it, and the next step is, in addition to showing it to all of you and getting it around, I'm going to start bringing it to rabbis. And we'll make changes if we have to.
Would you intend to make a halachic orthodox?
I think this is halachic and orthodox.
So I'm saying maybe different. This way for everybody.
I don't think there's anything that I would write differently if it was only for orthodox use.
I see.
It's pretty orthodox,
I see.
but it's just written in a way that's sensitive that I think a reform, conservative, non-affiliated Jew would feel it also speaks to them. But it's totally, it doesn't, I think it's pretty orthodox. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's online, and actually we already have an updated version online. It's at the printer, we've already made some changes. The changes are minuscule, little things about where we put a line here and there, so it's nothing substantive. But yeah, it's online, it's on the Cedars-Sinai website. It's on the spiritual care department at Cedars-Sinai's website also, where we have a list of a good RCA, conservative, we have all of them there. And I have a website, actually now, I made because of all this stuff, I want to keep it in one place. So it's on rabbiweiner.com. Also, there's a tab, Advanced Directives, which you're the first people that I'm telling that I have a website, because I'm not really done with it, but I made a tab just for the Advanced Directive where I'm going to put the videos and stuff like that, all the details of the Advanced Directive on that tab. So, and the Advanced Directive is available there as two different documents, the Advanced Directive and the wraparound that we just went through. Yeah.
Will you be revealing those rabbis who have given their okay to it?
Yeah, once I get official rabbinic support for it, yes, I'll definitely reveal it. I feel like I feel confident about it. But yes, I would be happy once I get some rabbis behind it. I'll be happy to share that.
Do you think RCA or Aguda would adopt something like this?
I plan to bring it to them. They have their own documents, so.
This is very it's a proxy. It's very simple.
Yeah, the thing is, I intentionally didn't want to make it one organization because I felt like if I go to Aguda or I go to whoever, it becomes like one camp, And I felt like Cedars-Sinai is neutral. Everyone knows Cedars-Sinai is a world-class hospital. They know it's just Jewish, and it's neutral. It's not. So I feel like the most liberal and the most extreme, whatever, in any direction, could feel like, it's. I can embrace this. So I am trying to keep that neutrality. That was kind of intentional. Yeah. Any other questions? The rest of this is just whatever options you have in the Advanced Directive. Then the wraparound form just kind of gives some description of it and explains it. In case you have questions, you can look in the wraparound form and it will give you a little bit more. Because my goal was to keep the Advanced Directive itself as concise and simple as possible. That's why you have the wraparound form to give you a little bit more detail and nuance. Yeah.
What should I set it to, Laniana? What are the Israeli hospitals?
The Israeli scene is more complicated. There